Viewers are invited right now to post their location and the exact time they're watching, because stories like this have a way of crossing borders and time zones, binding people together over the strange things humans do in the name of power. And so the scene opens with Margaret Thornfield zip-tied to a folding chair on her lawn, shrieking about sovereign jurisdiction as if she were a character in some fringe constitutional drama, while a sheriff calmly read her Miranda rights. The neighborhood was out in force, kids dangling bikes by their handlebars, retirees shading their eyes with disbelief, and above them a rogue drone hummed, recording every last humiliating second. It was a circus that looked spontaneous, but really, the seeds of it had been planted weeks before, and they sprouted in the most ridiculous way, over a fishing pole. Daniel Harper, who isn't exactly a rebel. He's more of a soft-spoken software developer who tends tomatoes and occasionally ties on rubber boots, was just standing by the creek with worms from the bait shop, minding his own business. That's when Margaret, HOA president and self-styled guardian of Mother Earth, decided his peaceful Saturday counted as a full-scale assault on the ecosystem. She invented something called the Environmental Task Force, which, according to county records, existed only in the foggy attic of her imagination. Yet she leaned into it with such confidence you almost wanted to applaud, like watching someone juggle flaming swords while insisting gravity is optional. Historians still argue whether small-scale power attracts eccentrics or whether eccentricity blossoms under the fluorescent light of authority, but Margaret was the case study everyone's been waiting for. Her campaign started with notes taped to his door, written in ornate cursive, claiming unauthorized incursion into protected soil. Then came the Polaroid photos, grainy shots of Daniel and hip waiters, holding a tackle box, as if he were smuggling contraband across borders. Next, a teenage spy with a GoPro set up, like some low-budget wildlife documentary crew, filming him stepping into his own yard. When Daniel ignored all this, she escalated with orange violation stickers accusing him of crimes so bizarre you'd think she was pulling them from a conspiracy forum, disturbing theoretical birds, altering the water table with his footsteps, creating unauthorized aerial obstructions with his fishing line. Imagine explaining that one at Thanksgiving. Then came the $30,000 fine, delivered in a manila envelope with the smugness of a cat dropping a dead mouse on the porch. She'd invented more than 60 infractions and even offered him a payment plan with 20% interest, which she insisted was standard environmental practice. Fringe tidbit. In medieval times, peasants were fined for wearing clothes above their social station, a rule as arbitrary as Margaret's list of ecological crimes. Daniel laughed at first, but when bright stickers multiplied across his fence like neon graffiti, and when Margaret began holding Nature's Court sessions in her garage under a homemade banner, he realized laughter wouldn't fix it. Something darker was unfolding, and soon it would explode. So Daniel did what any calm, rational man with a fishing pole and a belly full of patience would eventually do. He drove straight to the county records office. It smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner, the kind of place where clerks whisper about property lines the way monks once whispered about scripture. He filed his request, tapped his fingers while the copier hummed, and what he uncovered nearly made him laugh out loud right there in front of a clerk sipping tepid coffee. That protected conservation land, Margaret was foaming at the mouth over. It still belonged to the long-defunct Southern Rail and Timber Corporation, which folded back in the 1980s. The land had reverted to county ownership 2 decades ago, meaning Margaret had no more control over it than she did over the tides. Daniel gathered the evidence, land deeds, tax records, maps stamped with official seals, and built a dossier thicker than any HOA handbook. He didn't stop at one office, either. He sent copies to the county commission, the sheriff, the state attorney general, even that local news station that thrives on HOA scandals the way squirrels thrive on dropped French fries. And once the package was mailed, he marched back to his creek and cast his line into the water, worms wriggling, as though to say, "Catch me if you can." 2 days later, the cavalry arrived. County investigators in dark suits showed up at the HOA meeting, which Margaret had been running like a Broadway rehearsal, laminated agendas, printed scripts, her visor tipped like a general's helmet. She tried to shoo them away, rattling off closed session bylaws and civic protocol, but one woman in a tailored blazer cut her short with a phrase sharp enough to slice glass. "Ma'am, we're not here for the HOA. We're here for you." The color drained from Margaret's cheeks like rain sliding off fresh paint. Turns out Daniel wasn't her only target. Investigators discovered she'd pocketed more than $80,000 in bogus fines from dog walkers, bird watchers, and even one poor neighbor who planted daisies she hadn't pre-approved. All that money flowed into a personal account she called the HOA Defense Fund, which funded her Hawaiian vacation and a bubbling hot tub nestled behind her own fence. A fringe tidbit here. In ancient Rome, some emperors taxed urine because it was used in tanning leather, so arbitrary fines have a long, smelly history. Historians still argue whether petty rulers believe their own lies or simply get addicted to watching neighbors squirm. As the investigation widened, Margaret's entire house of cards shook. Fake conservation permits with made-up numbers, a phony endorsement letter from an imaginary National Environmental Safety Board, even a slick website plastered with stock photos of people in lab coats, donation button wired straight to her PayPal. The evidence was like finding mold under wallpaper. The deeper they scraped, the worse it stank. And all the while, Daniel kept fishing, as if to remind everyone that peace sometimes looks like defiance. The warrants came swiftly, cutting off Margaret's accounts, freezing every last cent she'd siphoned from neighbors under her banner of stewardship. The PayPal page disappeared like it had never existed, the hot tub bubbles went cold, and within hours she was zip-tied on her manicured lawn, the drone whirring overhead to immortalize her downfall. That clip of her writhing and shouting about constitutional rights spread across the internet faster than a cat video. 3 million views in a week, and the comments section turned into a roast session so brutal it could have cooked marshmallows. Daniel, sitting on his porch with a glass of iced tea, watched the spectacle unfold, half amused, half relieved that truth had finally shoved its way into the spotlight. But the investigation didn't stop with fines and fake websites. Deputies found boxes of counterfeit county seals ordered online, a laminating machine used to officialize her nonsense, and a notebook filled with forged signatures of actual county officials. She'd even created fake email accounts pretending to be government employees, sending threats to neighbors about duck feeding and groundwater contamination. One elderly man had handed her $2,000 just to avoid imaginary federal charges, while another family tore down their above-ground pool because she told them it was poisoning aquifers. Fringe tidbit. In the Middle Ages, some towns outlawed bathing because they believed hot water spread disease, proof that fear and misinformation have always been a potent currency. Historians still argue whether such rules were born from genuine ignorance or just another way to keep ordinary people in line. The trial lasted 3 tense weeks. Margaret, true to form, fired her lawyers, claimed natural law justified her actions, and tried to represent herself, brandishing Wikipedia printouts like sacred scrolls. The jury took less than 2 hours. Guilty on every count: fraud, impersonation, conspiracy to commit theft. When the judge read the sentence, 8 years in state prison, restitution of all funds, and a lifetime ban from any HOA board, Margaret fainted, carried out on a stretcher, still mumbling about wetlands through an oxygen mask. Daniel, ever the quiet man, didn't gloat. He simply walked back to his creek, cast his line, and let the silence speak for itself. And now the pace softens, the storm of absurdity settling into a calm ripple. Picture Daniel under the evening sky, the water reflecting streaks of orange and violet as the day winds down. The frenzy of neighbors whispering, the buzzing of drones, the clang of gavels. All of it fades behind the steady rhythm of a man fishing at peace. The story that once rattled the entire community shrinks into a local legend, retold with chuckles at barbecues, passed on with caution to newcomers. The smell of fresh-cut grass drifts through the air, dogs bark distantly, children laugh as if nothing had ever happened, and the creek flows on, indifferent to the drama it sparked. The lesson is both simple and quiet, that power built on lies collapses under the weight of truth, that communities can heal after chaos, and that sometimes the most profound victory is choosing to live gently while others rage. So breathe slower now, let the story fade like sunlight on water, and remember that no matter how loud the storm gets, calm always waits on the other side, whispering that peace is not only possible, it's inevitable.